Hey everybody, this is No Lies Detected. I'm David Raine, and I'm here with Chike Evans, and we're excited to talk to Leigh Chapman, who works in voter protection. So we want to see what she has to say.
You know, I've been anxious about this one. I'm really excited, so I'm looking to see what Ms. Chapman has to say.
Yeah, yeah.
My name is Leigh Chapman, and I'm the director of the Voting Rights Program at the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights.
Excellent. Hi, Leigh, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Very psyched.
Thank you for coming. You know, someone of your stature, you know, David and I both, we became very stoked when we found out that we could book you, and we're so happy that you're here.
No problem, it's fine.
Yeah, you're making us real legit now.
Happy to be on.
Good, good.
So tell us about your what you do in, I guess the scope of your job.
Sure. So the Leadership Conference is the nation's oldest and largest civil rights coalition. We've actually been around for over 70 years, and we've been really at the front lines of every major civil rights battle in our nation's history for those 70 years. So we were the lobbyists that pushed to pass the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. We organized the first March on Washington. And so now we work on 11 different issues. I direct the Voting Rights Program. And so we're really the umbrella organization of the Civil Rights Coalition. So we have 220 member organizations, and it's a really diverse membership. It's anywhere from the NAACP to the ACLU, to all the Divine Nine sororities and fraternities, to women's groups and environmental groups. So we really believe that to make the change we want to see in our country, we need to do it in coalition. So that's the work I lead. I lead all the advocacy at the federal level and then also in the states with our coalition.
That's kind of what we were talking about. So there's another interview we did, and it was about, where does your vote go and how do we know that I'm heard? And it's like that, and we were saying there has to be a planned approach, through the policies, through the people that you support, and you have to know who you're supporting and why. And then
definitely. And, with elections, they're very localized, but, there's also elections at the state level and at the federal level. So that's why in coalition, organizations in our coalition are currently litigating in the states. We're lobbying for voter access laws in the states and then also at the federal level. And especially with the time we're in with COVID-19, this is an election that we have never seen before. We've never really had one in the middle of a pandemic like this, where, we don't want people to have to choose between their health and their right to vote. So really since March, when COVID hit, we've been lobbying Congress to make sure that states have additional money to make sure that voters can, safely cast a ballot this year during this pandemic.
Wow.
What are your thoughts of the mail-in ballot situation? I mean, a lot of people are distrustful of it because they're distrustful of mail, let alone if they pay attention to certain people calling it a fraud. But how do you address that with your, you're talking?
Yeah, no, mail-in ballots are safe and they're secure, and they're really essential this year because of COVID-19, because we don't want people to have to choose between their health and the right to vote. So voting at home is safe, and it's something that 5 states have done for years. And there's always been some form of mail-in balloting since back in the Civil War, actually. So there are really little instances of voter fraud. We don't really see it at all. It's really rhetoric to make it harder for people to vote. It's really a voter suppression tactic when we're hearing people say, don't vote by mail. But with the pandemic, we know that there are varying levels of people's comfort when it comes to vote by mail. So we are just trying to advocate people to vote early, whether that's by mail, whether that's early in person, but just get it done early. And it's really interesting because here we are a month out from the election and over 3 million people have already voted. And if you look at the numbers in 2016, it's only around 10,000 people who voted at this time. Okay. So it shows that people are really taking voting early seriously, which is critical, especially with, we've heard everything about the slowdown of the Postal Service. So, we're advocating for everyone to vote early. If you want to vote by mail, make sure you get your ballot, you fill it out, as carefully as possible, but return it right away, whether that's via mail, in person at an elections office or at one of the ballot drop boxes that are all around cities around the country.
So I have a question about mailing, and this is specifically for me. So one of the things that I'm concerned about is the mailing ballots being tossed out because of illegitimacy. So one of the things that I heard is if your signature does not match the one on your registration card, your vote can be tossed out and claimed invalid. Is that true?
Yeah, so signature matching is something that's really critical. And a lot of times ballots do get thrown away because the signature on your voter registration or your ID card does not match what's on the ballot. And that's problematic because, you know, a lot of people when they age, when they get older, your signature can change. Or I have no idea how I signed my voter registration when I first registered, you know? So what state election officials are required to do in most states is notify voters if the signature does not match. So voters have an opportunity to cure their ballot, which means they have an opportunity to provide an updated signature. But this happens, and actually people of color, Black and brown voters, tend to have our ballots thrown out more than white voters. So it is an issue, and that's why it's just important for people to just really be careful when you're signing that ballot. In Philly, I don't know if you've heard of something called the naked ballot. It's an issue that's come up in Pennsylvania elections. And in Pennsylvania, there's 2 envelopes.
Oh, yeah, yeah, secrecy envelope.
Yes, so you have to make sure that you put your ballot in that secrecy envelope, and then you put it in the envelope that, you know, you seal, and then that goes into the mail. And if you don't have that inner envelope, it will get thrown out too. So that's why reading those instructions is really critical.
Yeah. There was another, and that seems like sort of a secret suppression tactic as well, having all these loopholes, you know. But there's, what was the other thing? If you don't vote a certain amount of time, then you can actually be unregistered without them telling you.
So it's called voter purges. Yeah, so many states, when you die, right, you're removed from the rolls, or if you've moved, you are removed from the rolls. But there are some states that are taking a more aggressive approach, that if you haven't voted in a few federal elections, they send you a notice in the mail, and if you don't respond to that notice, then you are removed. And Ohio does it, Georgia does it. There was a Supreme Court case in 2018 that basically rubber stamped that. And all the voting rights advocacy groups were against this. We think that, you know, voting shouldn't be a use it or lose it privilege. But that's why we're telling everybody, you know, right now, before voter registration deadlines end, just make sure you check your voter registration, because you may think that you're registered, but you might not be because of these voter purges. And nationwide, in between 2016 and 2018, 17 million people were actually kicked off the rolls and purged. So, you know, make sure you check those your registration, because the deadlines are coming up really quickly in most states.
There was somebody in Texas, a friend of mine, and she said that she assumed she was registered at the beginning of the year, and she went to double check, and from the beginning of the year till now, she was taken off.
Wow, yeah.
She had to re-register. So
that's good that she checked it, because a lot of times people don't know that they were purged until they show up to vote and they're not on the books. And then you have to vote a provisional ballot. But if you're not registered, that provisional ballot won't count. So it's really critical that you check that.
Yeah.
So we hear a lot this year, especially with everything that's going on, plan your vote. Can you talk a little bit about that, planning your vote, and what your average person should look for when actually going to the polls or trying to vote?
Yeah, planning your vote is critical this year because of COVID-19. You know, sorry, someone was calling me. Planning your vote is really critical this year, especially because of COVID-19. So one website that we advocate for everyone to go to is vote.org. It has everything you need. It's a one-stop shop. You can register to vote. You can check the deadlines for voter registration in your state. You can check to see when early voting starts, when you have to request a mail-in ballot. So that's really important. Also checking your polling place. Because of COVID-19, a lot of poll workers are not going to show up, and there's been a massive effort by advocates to recruit poll workers around the country. And so a lot of polling places are being closed. You know, there were some polling places that were in nursing homes, which were closed because of COVID-19. So it's critical that you also check your polling place well in advance as well.
That's pretty wild.
So what, on average, what are some of the things that people are seeing to the negative when they're voting? Give us an example of like worst case scenarios for people.
You know, I feel like this year we are really in uncharted territory in our country. You know, we don't know what's going to happen on election day. And I don't want to scare people, but voter intimidation is something that's real and can possibly happen, especially when there's rhetoric out of the White House telling people to go and watch the polls, right? So I think that people just need to make sure that you're safe. We work with the Lawyers Committee on Civil and Human Rights, and they have an election protection hotline. It's called 1-866-OUR-VOTE, and they have volunteer lawyers and volunteer poll monitors that are really there to help voters. But I just think that this year there's just so much heightened racial tensions in our country that people should just be careful and watch out for that. But I don't want that to scare people from turning out, but it's just a reality that we're living in our country right now.
Yeah.
If someone went to the polls and they were turned away and unable to vote at the polls, what should they do?
I would first tell them to call the hotline, 1-866-OUR-VOTE, and there's someone there who can help them. But, you know, I think for people, we should really view November 3rd as the absolute last day that you're voting. You know, it should just, people should plan and vote early. So do it by mail. If you don't feel comfortable with mailing it in, drop it off at a ballot box, drop it off at an election official office. You know, I voted earlier this week and I did mail mine in, or vote early. You know, I feel like if as many people can vote before election day, we're just in better shape. But if anybody has any issues, please call the election protection hotline and people can help you.
Excellent. Yeah, I got the email saying mine was on the way. So
oh, good. That's great.
I'm doing a mail in, but I'm probably going to drop it off as well.
Yeah.
It's like you said, it's such a unprecedented time, and you can't do anything.
Yeah, a lot of my friends and family, they are doing the mail-in, but they are dropping it off at those ballot drop boxes. And you can look those up on your county election official website to find out those locations.
Right. Excellent.
And where would one go if they want to volunteer for the polls?
Sure. So Lawyers Committee on Civil Rights, they have a website. It's called 1-866-OUR-VOTE.org. And so it's the hotline number, but it's also their website. And so they have lawyers who are volunteers, who are manning the hotline, who can help voters, but they also have grassroots non-lawyer volunteers who can also stand outside of polling places, or a lot of things are also happening virtually now with COVID-19, but they can assist voters as they need to. So I would say if you want to be a poll monitor, go to the Lawyers Committee 1-866-OUR-VOTE website, you can sign up. Also, there's a need, as I mentioned earlier, for poll workers because of the poll worker shortage. You know, the average age of poll workers in our country is 65 years old. And, you know, of course, that demographic is more likely to get COVID-19. So we're trying to recruit younger poll workers. And so there's an organization called Power the Polls. You can go to their website, powerthepolls.org, and sign up to be a poll worker if you would like to. And they're also providing everyone PPE because we want to make sure that people are also safe as they're serving their community as well.
Excellent.
That was awesome.
Yeah, so much awesome and clear information. We won't tell you about the other two interviews. We just they were all great. It's just that it was more like, you know, you're emotional. It was more emotional in your opinion, but you're like so factual, it's so perfect. You're like, yes.
I guess it's the lawyer in me. I don't know.
Yeah.
But one thing I did want to say, and one thing I'm trying to say everywhere I'm speaking and every interview I have, is that we are not going to get the election results on November 3rd on election night. I know we're all used to, you know, staying up late. You know, you see the states being shaded in blue or red, and, you know, usually there's a winner that's called, but because of the influx of vote by mail ballots. Because of COVID-19, states have a while to count those ballots, and it's going to take longer to count those ballots. So we probably won't know the winner of the election for a few weeks after the election. It doesn't mean that there's fraud happening. It just means that the system is playing out and we want every single vote to be counted. So a lot of people aren't aware of that and how that's going to look different this year, but we should just all be prepared for that reality.
Yeah. And of course, no matter, you know, if the outcome comes out a certain way, a certain team is going to call it fraud anyway. So
yeah, it's likely that someone could call the election early before all the votes are counted, but because the organizations were all prepared, we've run every single scenario that could potentially happen. And we are prepared just to say, you know, everyone be calm, be patient. We have to wait for every vote to count before a winner is called. So any early calling of elections is not going to be something that we will be supporting.
yeah. Excellent.
Wow. I'm so pleased with all the information because you're hitting, even before I can get a chance to formulate another question, you're answering for me. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoy you being on. So much information.
Sure.
Thank you so much. And depending on how things go, are the lines still open if we needed you to pop back in later, like maybe just before election day or something like that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so many things could change between now and election day. So many things can change between, you know, election day and when all the votes are counted. And then now, you know, with the president having COVID, you know, there's a lot of different potential scenarios. So
Yeah.
back on and speak to you all.
Awesome.
Things evolve. There's always late breaking news almost every day, every hour. So
yeah,
yeah,
it's been, seems like it's been that way since 2020 hit.
yeah,
yeah,
right.
pretty much. Yeah. Well, thank you, Leigh.
Sure, no problem.
We will hopefully talk to you soon again. And this was extremely helpful for us and whoever's going to get the benefit of watching this. It's great.
Yeah, and good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, have a good weekend.
You too.
You too.